A long, long time ago, I used to live in the Cappuccinastraat of Maastricht, and in a cracked house. And in the same building was a German girl called Hannelore. This is a piece that Hannelore sent me a long time ago as well. And in this little envelope is her message. And it says, "Rod, are you still alive?" I should have done that in a German accent, but I'm afraid that's a bit beyond me today. So, Hannelor's little piece of mail. Try and put it back in without destroying the envelope, which is showing signs of age, as am I. Okay, that's that. The mail art activity is global, although I say that, and in fact there's very little mail art comes out of Africa, and even less coming out of the Middle East or India. It's mostly on the east is China and Japan, Australia and New Zealand, and America, North and South, and of course Europe is very big into mail art. We saw in the beginning, a piece which said, "Are you still alive?" And this is a piece from Japan, from Kiichi. And this one says, "I'm still alive." And then we go completely from the ancient to the modern. This piece has just arrived here. This is from Australia, and it's an assembling where up to 100 artists are invited to send 100 pages to this fellow. His name is David Della Fiora in Australia, and then he puts the 100 pages together in books and sends one copy to each of the artists. And so it's called field study, and originally the idea was to send a study about performance art, but now it's become that people just send in works that are just make and send works that are only for this publication. And this is the list of the people, names and addresses of all of the participants over the years, and it must be close on 200 people, maybe quite a few more. And then people send in 100 pieces, supposedly the same, to show what we're all busy with. So somebody's made 100 pieces of this and stuck it on with a pin and then sent it to Australia. Somebody's cut out 100 nothings. And I'll show you my piece in here, if I can find it. What I did was took 100 pieces of A6 blue paper, I printed on it crumpled, and then I crumpled it between my hands 10 times. Each one of the 100 sheets was crumpled 10 times, and then I signed it on the back and sent it off, and then David published it all together with the other artists. And you see all kinds of different works, and it comes from many different countries, so there's probably 40 countries plus are represented in this publication. And I know many of these people. Many of these people actually also contact me. I like this piece a lot. It's very sweet. And so that's field study and assembling. Okay, and back in the envelope. And nearly always with these works, the editor or publisher sends a personal message along with it, and an invitation to the next one. And he does one of those a year and has been doing that for 30 years. So there are 30 of these assemblings made just by this one artist. He also asks, which is sort of interesting, he also asks that if the post office forgets to cancel the stamps, that I should cut them out and send them back so that he can reuse them. And this is three, in Australia they have dollars, I think, is it? So it's $3. So there's $12 on there, $12 plus. So I always send them back to him. I've written to him already and said thank you, it's a wonderful publication, and you'll get your stamps back. So that's ancient and modern. And then talking about ancient, this is another ancient work. There was a time, and it wasn't, for me as an old man, it wasn't that long ago, there was a time when we didn't have computers. Seems hard to believe. And also we didn't have personal telephones. I mean, I often like to say as an old man that when I was a child there was only one telephone in the village and it was in the hallway. Now everybody has an own telephone and they have it in their pocket all the time. But there was a time before computers, and then computers were introduced and became popular amongst artists in the very late 70s, the beginning of the 80s. And it took some while before the internet and email and electronic communication took off. And this is a book by Fred Truck from America. It's from 86, 87. And it is actually the first book that was printed on a 9-pin printer and was sent to me back then. So this is the Electric Bank's book called The Memory Bank by Fred Truck. And it's all texts about and pictures about the mail art scene which was growing back then, and with the names of the people who were busy with it back then and the people who were actually just starting to experiment with computers. It's very clean and tidy still. You can still read everything there, even though it's 30, 40 years old. It hasn't deteriorated, although there is a slight browning of the paper around the edges. But the images are basically exactly the same as they were when the book arrived here. So the ink has remained good. Charlie Morrow. Okay, so 19, whoops, put it back properly. '80s, early 80s. This is what we were busy with back then. It's amazing, it's still in relatively good condition. I've still got a 9-pin printer downstairs. Okay. Sometimes in the archive and sometimes in the mail you get something quite extraordinary. And this book on artist books is a catalogue of artist books. Is one of those things which is an extraordinary publication. It opens in a very bizarre way, like this, and it shows work also from the 80s of artists. It's a catalogue of the artist books that were made and sent for this publication, sent to Germany. I think Klaus Groh and one other person whose name has slipped by me for the moment have produced the book. There is a title page somewhere. But it shows, and this was in the days basically before computers were being employed to produce books, or the situation now where you can send off your work to a company and they produce you the books as necessary in a very short time. This is when books were actually real objects. Ryosuke Koen, very famous Japanese artist who's still in contact with me. And so this whole catalogue of many hundreds, I should think, a couple of hundred artists' books published in Germany, and in there, if I can turn this around safely and keep it in the same area, this is the book that I sent, and this was printed on a little very early computer, a Sinclair ZX81, and it had a little printer attached to it which printed on thermal paper, and this is the book that I sent. It was a little book printed on a roll of thermal paper via a ZX81 computer. And it folds up. In the same way. Now we're back to a different this is a bit different, because this, are you recording already? Oh, okay. I don't speak Spanish, but this is, at the moment there is quite a lot of attention being paid to a publisher and producer in England that was run by a Mexican, a Japanese lady, a Mexican fellow and his wife, and a Japanese lady and an English artist, and they lived down in Devon. They had a printing press, and they were called Boges Press, and their work is getting a lot of attention. And within the work that I have from them, I went to visit them also way back then. I went to visit them, and in amongst the works that I have from them turned up these telegrams. Now, I don't know, they must have given them to me, but these telegrams which were sent to the Boges Press, and Martin, who can read Spanish, told me that most of this stuff is to do with human rights. And so in the old days, before you phoned up or before you emailed somebody, if you really wanted to get in contact with them in a hurry and they didn't have a telephone, you would send a telegram. And then the telegram office in your town would then send a message to the telegram office in the town of the recipient. They would print it out in a line like this, and then somebody would come and deliver the telegram. So somehow or another, and I really don't know how, I have 3 telegrams all related to human rights behaviour from the Boges Press, which is also part of the BEC archive. You have to be very careful with these things because there's only one copy. Although, of course, I have scanned them all already, so I do have a computerized copy of them. So if the originals are lost, the history remains. Telegrams to the Boges Press in Spanish. Okay. Doesn't matter if they don't go back in the right box, I guess. The tablecloth is still wet, but at least it's cool. And finally, people make full-size books like you would find in a library, but also very popular amongst artists were making little books. And this is a very small part of my collection, or the VEC archive collection of little books. And most of them are from I read the name of it, Brian Lane, who I met. He lived in London. I don't know whether he still is active or whether he's still alive, but he was very good at making these wonderful little books and sending them to me. So I'll move that aside. And this is the Gourmet's Pocket Guide to Natural History. Beautiful paper. It's a real thing. It's not a digital thing. It's real. Locusts. It's amazing some of the beautiful things we eat. Somehow you think that it would be better that they were not eaten. The dodo. There is a modern a scientific a laboratory which is trying to bring the dodo back from the genes of the skeletons and things that they have. So they're hoping that we will actually manage to bring back the dodo. I think we should bring back Dada. It's probably a better idea. Although maybe it never went away. That's one of the books by Brian Lane, but he also made some of these. I just select at random here. Here's another one. I recently attended a book fair in Belgium, and I showed the works from Brian Lane, and one of the people who came to the exhibition really wanted to buy this book from me, and of course I'm not selling any of these works. They're not for sale, and I'm not breaking up the archive. It's called Some Improbable Openings. For my father, who continues to teach me the game, and for my mother, who continues to sleep throughout it. But this fellow was really wanted to buy this book. But if you have a book, even a little book like this, it's probably published in 25 copies. How on earth do you... That's very good, Brian. If you play chess, that's funny. Oh, look what he's doing. This is an amazing little book. Let's see if we can find how many the publisher was. Oh, he made 150. So, and this is number 5. So these were just a very small example of my archive of artist books, which has more than 3,000 books in it.